December 12th, 1996. I don't think I mentioned anything about the mafia. I think I just ought to say that she interviewed me because of me and my business, don't you think? Or do you think I should say there was a series on the underworld. This was a series that was printed in the Reader about the underworld, of which it's strange that I found this thing. Nothing's the way it used to be. You know, the only ones that gave me a bad review about my business, San Diego Magazine. The yard was full of bums, you know. They call it a fire hazard and what do you call it? I don't know, a blight area. Well, I used to bring them, my mother, this guy and I used to always take about, 4 dozen of those tacos from Jack in the Box.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we were friendly because we were always. My mother was always very good. She'd take donuts and coffee. She said, "Now just take care of we don't care if you're here, but just clean it up, and just take care of, don't starting fires and no drugs." It's a school. It was right across the street anyway. And what the bums were starting to do, they were starting to flash the teachers. And of course, I couldn't do anything about it, but they could. So they used to. Funny thing is, they were very, as a matter of fact, they're very smart people. You know that? Very intelligent, very well read, and very well known, but they're just bums. The thing is that somehow a lot of people are in bed with the CCDC. You know what I'm saying? You know what the CCDC is? The City Center Development, and they're all corrupt. And they're in cahoots, especially the developers, because my property was still on Proposition 13. Well, I practically paid nothing for my property tax. They want condos there that go up 40 stories so they can get all the money for the city. But see, eminent domain is what they really, you know what eminent domain is, don't you?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. That means they can take your property if they have a good reason to.
Yes. But it has to be for something for the good of the city, like a library or something.
Sometimes they build shopping centers, though, and they say just because it's a larger tax base that they have the right to do it.
And that's against the law.
Well, I think they've done it in some states.
Well, yeah, but they fought it like crazy. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who came from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Albuquerque, New Mexico, population 35,000. Our family came from Albuquerque in order to work at the defense plants and to earn some more money. My mother was known as, in quotes, Rosie the Riveter. Now, to me, the once in a time boy, the little boy, I started downtown selling papers when I was 10 years old, and I would sell papers, and I would sell papers and coincidentally, when I was selling papers, I started when I was 10, now I'm 78, 79, and I ended up back at the same place, in the Electric Building on the 29th floor. How great can that be for a young guy? True? And here's this little boy again. Besides selling newspapers, I sold ice cream. I went on the carriers and sold ice cream, you all scream for ice cream. Now, down to me a little bit. Downtown this is written by Judith Moore, who was probing the downtown San Diego Mafia, who I knew is a paperboy, and later on knew them in my business when they used to come in my store. Now, getting back to me, as she writes, about the Rainbow Gardens during World War II, Bill Heritage said, it was a dump, a sailor hangout. It got big play because it was right downtown and on Skid Row. All the bars were dumps. I didn't think so. I thought they were marvelous. There was anything goes. There was the Hollywood Burlesque. There was all the tattoo parlors, and all the bars were all lined up. We'd go to one place and have a great time. 24/7. Speaking of 24/7, downtown was like Times Square. 24 hours a day, David Barreras told me. Mr. Barreras, who had operated a party supply store called Dave's Display World for almost 40 years, was born in 1935. He arrived in San Diego in 1942. His mother and father, his older sister and Dave, and his younger brother and sister came from Albuquerque. We lived in a garage where when we first got here, that's all we could find. It was a snug lane over at 32nd Street. There wasn't any housing. My mother and dad and older sister worked the graveyard shift, the consolidated vaultee. My little sister and I were taken care of by my older brother, but we all took care of each other, really. It was a great time we had together. It was all togetherness. We had this little garage, and it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I'll never forget the days. We loved it so much, and all our family was together. In late 1943, early 1944, Mr. Barreras started selling the San Diego Tribune downtown. I don't know how I got involved selling papers, but I did. Work days and Saturdays and Sundays. On Sundays, I sold ice cream on the ships. Young Dave would go directly after school from Our Lady of Angels to the Tribune building on Broadway and pick up the newspapers. I would get 50 papers, 25 under one arm and 25 under the other arm. I did the whole circuit from the foot of Broadway all the way down to 16th Street in Market. I know every nook and cranny from downtown, from the Embarcadero all the way to 16th Street. On either side, I can take and show you almost practically every spot of what used to be there. I.e. example, the Tower Bowl, the Tower Theater, where the carnivals used to be, the locker clubs, all those joints and dumps, as they call them, were my hangouts, and that's where I hung out all the way to the bar, to the brick hotel, the brick bar on 16th and Broadway was the last stop of the bars, and from there on I would walk on, and my dad would pick me up after he got off work, and I would be walking home, and he'd find me, and I'd have my little charm hat with little charms on it, and that's how he could spot me, and then he would take me home. And that was where I stopped around where Our Lady of Angels school was, where I went to school. Young Dave would go directly to school from Our Lady of Angels in the Tribune building on Broadway and pick up his papers. I did that already. So the papers, I put 25 under each arm because my arms were so short that I had to put 25 on each side. Needless to say, that was quite a lot for a little boy. I did the whole circuit from the foot of Broadway all the way down to 16th and Market. Downtown was packed with sailors and Marines. From the Spreckles downtown, from the Spreckles Theater down to the foot of Broadway, there were at least 3 carnivals, like areas, area-like, which had Ferris wheels, bumper cars, and all the goodies that you'd want to see. Even a knock Mabel out of bed, which was my favorite to watch. You'd throw the ball and it would hit the ball on the wall, and then she would roll out of bed, throw up her legs, and you'd see her lingerie. That was quite shocking at that time. At the locker clubs, we were at the locker clubs, we're going full blast. The movie theaters all that went on 24 hours a day. Sometimes I didn't get home until 10 or 11 o'clock at night because besides selling papers, I met many people and I became friendly with them, and they sort of adopted me by various people. Not that I didn't have a great home, because I did. I had great parents. I was a cute little kid. I wore a little hat with charms on it. I had a ragamuffin look and sort of and I sort of played up on it. I think that during the war, I reminded everybody of his little brother back home. They were great getting getting ready to go overseas, and didn't know whether it was going to happen to them. So I was there. They helped me and gave me a lot of tips. Sometimes I would come home with at least $50 to $100 a night. I could make up $100 a day. Lots of tips in those days. Mr. Barreras had a lot of reputable business people. I had lawyers and real estate men, insurance companies, employees who sold insurance to people who owned the fishing boats. They tended to be on the other side of Broadway and F. Although other youngsters peddled papers, downtown during the war was most newsboys were older men. There were characters, said Mr. Barreras, like a Damon Runyon story. There was Slim. He had the gig on 6th and Broadway. You could go to the territories, but they, like other kids, like me, we were like the dead end kids, and since we could run faster than the older newsboys, we'd get in their corners and we would sell the papers before they got to us. I hit all the bars. The Rainbow Gardens was very rowdy. Raucous. It was like one of those bars you see in Singapore. The patrons were throwing chairs and were drunk and having a great time. Mostly sailors and the military. Across the street, the whole thing was bars, tattoo parlors, and the Hollywood Burlesque Theater, where I had more fun than ever. Around the corner, all the way to the Balboa Theater, bright red, white, and blue, in places like Sherman's Diamond Dance. Well, Sherman had that plush look, like Ciro's in Hollywood. Must have been. The bars were smoky, and you'd think Marlene Dietrich was sitting somewhere in there. I just had the whole feeling of that era. Frank Cola, born in 1929. Well, this is about another little boy that sold papers. This has nothing to do with me, so that's my little story that I have there. I went to Crystal Pier, yes.
What was it like in the 40s?
Quiet, very nice, very friendly, very subdued. And they had a piano bar that I loved to go to. I can't remember what the name. Do you remember the piano bar?
It was on the pier, wasn't it?
Yeah,
on
on
the
the pier. And I especially went there with my girlfriend, Janelle, who was my sweetheart, my sweetheart from high school. We'd go there all the time to listen to the music in the piano bar. Piano bars were very popular in San Diego at that time. We had one at the Tower Bowl, we had one at the Crystal Pier, and we had several downtown. There was one very popular nightclub that was called the Blue Note, and then of course on the other side of the Grand Hotel were the whole two whole blocks of bars, and the most famous was on the corner, which was called the Royal Club, and that was the most popular one. That area was all strewn with bars, and there were some wonderful Chinese food that you could eat that were upstairs on the second floor of the different bars. And the bars, incidentally, were very funny because they were all owned by the Matranga brothers, I believe, and consequently you could go from one bar to the next just by going through the alley. If you were in the back, you could even sneak through, and they'd serve you drinks, So that was the interesting part about the downtown bars. That, they serve you. Sometimes they would put, like, if they thought you could pass a little bit, they'd put a soft drink in front of you, and then they'd give you a beer. And then if the Vice Squad came in, then they'd take the beer and then you start drinking the 7-Up. So that's the way that went. But Sherman's Diamond Dance, and then there was the most popular place in San Diego to go was called the Pacific Square, and it was on it was on Broadway and Ash, right on the corner, and they had it in the back room where my sister went all the time. It was called the Jitterbug Jungle, and that's where all the girls went to Jitterbug. Jitterbug was the dance of the period. It was wonderful, wonderful time. Big bands could be seen practically everywhere. You could go to the Lafayette Hotel in a little room. You could see Doris Day with Les Brown at the orchestra. You could go all the way out to the Mission Beach and the big auditorium there. You could see Joni James. You could see Margaret Whiting, Kay Starr, Nat King Cole, Billy May, Artie Shaw, Charlie Barnett. All the big bands were always there. So every week there was something to go. Incidentally, in the complex of the Mission Beach, where the ballroom was, they used to have what they called it. Do you remember the movie called it? They Shoot Horses, don't they? They had the marathon, and that ran 24 hours a day. And my mother got addicted to it, so she would drag me along, and I just loved it. We'd watch the thing. It was the same thing as They Shoot Horses, and it was wonderful to watch all the stuff that they did. They had one girl that was sealed in ice, and she would be in ice for God knows how long, but it was fun just to watch and go through their stuff. It was wonderful, wonderful. The Mission Beach was wonderful. All the rides were wonderful. They had those cars, the bumper cars, and the rocket things. Yeah, that's great stuff. And then of course, what they were famous for was their plunge. The plunge was Olympic sized. It was wonderful. That whole complex was beautiful. Of course, it was built by Spreckles. He was a great philanthropist in San Diego. Interesting enough, the trolley went right by Fifth and Market and went all the way to La Jolla, but it incidentally went right by the Ferris. It was called the Ferris and Ferris Drugstore, which was incidentally owned by Gregory Peck's father. And that's how Gregory Peck became a native son of San Diego and started the La Jolla Playhouse, which in those years, later on, I was involved in the La Jolla Playhouse, and the Playhouse, they were trying to do it like the Pasadena Playhouse. So consequently, I was in some of the plays with, that Ida Lupino was one of the directors, and one of Howard Duff's, Marjorie Lord and Howard Duff, and I think Marjorie Lord went on to do a series in television. And then I met Marjorie Main, who introduced me to the people at RKO that gave me a screen test. And then from there I met Joe Rice in San Diego and Los Angeles, and he was the director at the Immaculata, and he got me a screen test. It's been so long I can't remember the dates or anything, and that's how I got into the Hollywood thing. I was just an extra, and I was would go there for the as much as I could to be seen in those beach blanket things, with Connie Francis and Frankie Avalon and so forth. But I did meet Jimmy Dean and Sal Mineo and Natalie Wood, and of course Dennis Hopper got it started at La Jolla Playhouse, and Charles Laughton, the British character actor, was the one that introduced Dennis Hopper to Hollywood, and that was where he got his start. So then I went on to open up my. I went to work at a store called J Displays, and then the rest is for another story, I think. Well, what happened at the time that I was the forerunner before Diane Powers at the Bazaar del Mundo, and I wanted to bring the kind of goods that were the handmade merchandise from Mexico. So consequently, I had a friend of mine that his girlfriend worked for me. Her name was Maria, and she had a boyfriend. He was a policeman, and he drove us to Mexico. Of course, he was a wild one. So consequently, we had to stop at all these little places for the mordida. Now, I'm sure you know what the mordida means. It means you have to give them something so you can go on. And all he wanted was my Polaroid camera. So I said to Hector, give him the damn Polaroid camera. And Hector said, no way. So he pulled out his gun, the other one pulled out his gun, and it was like a Mexican standoff. And I said, oh God, Bill, my companion for 50-some years, said, David, what have you gotten me into here? This guy's going to kill us. Sure enough, the guy, they both drew, and Hector won, So we went on our way. As we went on our way, this wonderful, awful thing happened. We got in a terrible accident because that's when I borrowed my sister's car, which had that time the motors were in the back, and the car swayed against the rocks, big rocks, and we got into this horrible accident. And it was interesting because the accident was this wonderful couple who were on their honeymoon, and they were kind enough to put us in their car and take us down to Mazatlan. They took us all the way to Mazatlan, and we were screaming and dying, and Bill was just, beside himself. When we got to Mazatlan, we had the wonderful nuns take care of us, and I was in the corner bleeding, and Bill said, "Don't take care of him. Don't take care of me. What? Take care of him. He's dying over there in the corner." Consequently, we stayed there with the wonderful nuns at Mazatlan for at least 2 months. Hector stayed there because he had broken his leg and he was not ambulatory. So we went on to the trip. So on my tour to Mexico, as I wanted, Bill just, the beginning of the awful that he experienced, he just hated it. Every time I mentioned Mexico, he wouldn't even talk about it. So as we go to the hotel, we check in the hotel, this beautiful hotel, and of course we get up to about the 15th floor, and wouldn't you know, in the middle of the night, the buildings start shaking. And all the buildings downtown, because Mexico is built on the lake, I believe, and consequently, the buildings were sinking. The one I looked out of the window, they looked like they were sinking about 12 inches. It was unbelievable. And my companion, he said, "Oh, Jesus, David." He got on his knees and he was in his jockey shorts. He started praying. And he's not a big, prayer person, but he got in there, and then we finally got ourselves together, went outside to the elevator, and we got out, and we couldn't, all the Americans, they were waiting for the elevator, so we started pushing them down the stairs. "You got to get out of here." They wouldn't go. They said, "We got to take the elevator." I said, "No, you got to get out of here now." So we're pushing all these people down here. This is about 25 people. It was utter chaos. So we finally got them all down there. And once you know, after they got downstairs, they all meet at the park there. They got all this tequila out and started drinking it all night. So there we go on that story. Then from there on, I decided I wanted to go to Oaxaca, because they had all the black pottery that I wanted. We get on this bus, and of course all the inhabitants they're all cooking, making their tortillas and eating and cooking all their pork and chickens and everything. There they are, and Bill's going. And the bus driver is going all the way up these mountains, and my Bill is screaming, "I got to get out of here! I got to stop! Get out of here!" The bus driver could pay no attention at all. He just kept going. We looked down the canyons, and all these buses and cars were all at the bottom of the terrain. It was awful. So, to make a long story short, we finally get to Oaxaca. Then I drag him to the prisons, because I wanted to go to the prisons to get prison art. So here we go to the prisons. And "David, here we go again. Why are you doing this to me?" Finally, we got to Oaxaca. We got the stuff I wanted. We got the prison art, and then we got the luxurious train from Oaxaca to Mexico again, and there we go. So, and incidentally, when we were there in the earthquake, Connie Francis was going to appear at the Hilton. The minute she got off the plane, she said, "Get me out of here." So she got out of town. So, the whole thing was insane, the way it all fit together. But as you think about it now, it was very fun, and who knows how these things happen, but they always seem to happen to me for some reason. So there we are, kids. Tune in for the next story, I guess.